on specific outcome variables, which are regional GDP growth, industrial production, value added, and the number of SMEs. The context of the timeline of the research is 2010-2020. We use the DID approach. The main idea is the assumption was the impact might not be necessarily in the two regions through which the line is going, but also may extend to the spillover effect. And this was supported by our previous research, which we did with Dean Yoshinov, a case of Tashkazar-Kurgan railway line in Uzbekistan, and there was a similar Shinkansen rail project in Japan. Okay, this is a timeline of the project. There was a construction till the year 2016, and it was launched in 2016. We look at the launching effect, and we differentiate them by the short, mid, and long-term periods. Then we assume that because there is a reduction in information asymmetry and market knows about the construction of the line, there might be some anticipation effects, or also the construction also might add into the GDP during the construction period, because there is some work is created. And then we have postponed effects where we assume that there might be some, it take some time for the market to respond, and there might be effect which might come 1 or 2 years later. So this is the region where this is the first assumption. We assume the impact might take place where actually railway line is located. Then we look at the spillover effects where we add the regions, nearby regions. And then we also look at what we call the connectivity effects, because in the transportation mode, if you analyze the goods and they are transported by truck for the short distances, they transported by rail for the longer distances, and for the longest distance, they are transported by airplane. So here we're also checking for this hypothesis that those regions located at the far end of the within railway system in Uzbekistan might also be affected. This is a methodology which we use. It's a DID approach where you divide the total observations into two groups. One is the treatment group and second is the control group. And we assume that control group is affected by autonomous rate of growth, time-specific effects and region-specific effects. And the treatment group is equal to the control group plus delta difference, which is created due to the introduction of the railway line. And so this is the main effects which we are controlling. So mainly they are needed for to control for the nuisance parameters and not necessarily to make an inference. We're interested only in a DID coefficient. Okay, this is the preliminary results. The main inference is there is a positive effect both in the regions of the railway line and in the neighboring regions. There is a positive, significant, and still significant effect in the neighboring regions as well. If you look at the connectivity effects, they are not significant, or in terms of magnitude-wise, they are not also very high. Then we can look at the composition of its outcome variables. Again, you can see that the impact is high for the spillover effect. There is a neighboring regions also benefiting a lot, and it's statistically significant. The region itself is also, but it's only marginally significant. And you can see that postponed effects in terms of magnitude-wise are higher than launching effects or anticipation effect, because as time goes by, the impact is increasing. And this is a last one about grows a number of enterprises. So you can see that it's also, there is a positive statistical association, both in the region, which is only like marginally significant, and in the neighboring spillover regions. But in terms of connectivity, we do not find a significant result, or neither in terms of the magnitude. So this is an interesting difference from our previous research results, which we've done for Tashkazar-Kurgan railway line. But this is our preliminary results, and we will be grateful to receive feedback and incorporate those feedback into our paper. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much for your excellent presentation, Umid. Let's move to questions and answers. I think we have one question from menti.com. Thank you very much. So what is the net present value of the spillover effect when compared with the NPV project cost or revenue? That's, you can see on the screen right now.
What is the present NPV or spillover effect when compared to the NPV project cost of the revenue? Okay, when we talk about spillover effect, we also including its effect in the neighboring regions. Yeah, but when we calculate the NPV before the project, we only look at how it is affecting the accounting rate of return. And with economic NPV, we also include those benefits which can be turned into monetary terms after the effect. This is the main difference.
Okay, we got a question from Yoshina Sensei, Professor Yoshina. Do you want to ask, or should I read?
I'll ask. Umid, thank you very much for your presentation. I have a question. Why connectivities are not significant in this case? Previous railway cases in Uzbekistan, connectivity was significant. Do you think any in mind reason why it was not?
Yeah, that's a very interesting point, because as you mentioned in our previous paper for Tashkent railway lines, the connectivity effect was very strong, and both in terms of if you look at the decomposition of GDP for the services sector, it was very high, almost like 8%. For the industry, it was around 5%. For the agriculture, it was like around 1%, and the strongest was the connectivity effect. But in this case, interestingly, the effect of the region is high, and for the spillover effect, it's also very high. Probably this has to do with an established mode of transportation between central Uzbekistan and southern regions. But this is something which is definitely we need to look into. Yeah, I think this was an interesting point, which now I need to think about the explanation, how to explain this difference.
Yeah, I think you have to explain why there are sometimes connectivity is significant, sometimes are not. And that is very important for your policy too. Thank you.
Exactly, because if you remember when we did it for Japan, also Kyushu Shinkansen, for Kagoshima, Kumamoto, and Shizuoka, and the effect of the Kyushu Shinkansen was also significant when it was connected with Sanyo Shinkansen. So it was a connectivity effect, and its impact on tax revenues. But in this case, we somehow not capturing that effect. Probably I need to look at different sets of outcome variables, and they might be captured by them. Probably the model specification also might have to do something with this, but we will definitely look into this and come up with meaningful and constructive explanation. Yes.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. It was good to see you.
Yeah. Thank you. There is one more question on menti.com, if we can see it. Thank you very much. How do you ensure the parallel trends, assuming holds for the difference in difference regression?
Yeah, that's a very good question, because most important assumption is the assumption of the parallel trends. To do this, we compare the main important variables of the regions, which we allocate to the treatment group and control group, and we ensure that they are comparable prior to the intervention of the railway line. So we can look at the Euclidean distance between the measure indicators and say, okay, they are comparable and their growth trends are similar prior to the introduction of the railway line, and we will demonstrate this in the paper. But this is a very good point.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I would like everyone, if you want to continue asking questions from Umid, please type in Q&A or in menti.com. I would like to invite Umid Abidhaджаев.
Yes, thank you very much. Director, thank you very much for a nice presentation. I just was wondering, using translate type production is amazing because it takes into account the interaction terms as in difference from a production function. And then when we look at the macro effects, we can see that they kind of peaking out from 61 to 70, 1961 to 70s in Japan. And then the same for the private capitals effect from 61 to 75. And then 65, and then we can see that it's slightly decreasing the impact. And as you mentioned, there might be two reasons. One is aging population. Second is investing first at the urban, then it started expanding to the rural areas. And do you think in a current environment, when we have so many infrastructure projects, including One Way, One Belt project, and then Rana Hassan's paper, Meeting Asia's Infrastructure Needs, says that we need to invest $22 trillion till 2030. And if it's climate adjusted, it should be $27 trillion. Do you think there is a risk of overinvesting and not understanding the moment when the impact already started decreasing? And what are your suggestions on how to recognize that moment and how to make most of the infrastructure investment? Because one of the risks is when we overinvest and then it is frozen in like an infrastructure form, then you have need to spend too much money on how to maintain as a facility. And what are your thoughts about identifying that moment, which was similar in Japan when it was peaking out, and then the further investment was bringing not the highest effects? Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think in general, at the beginning of the development, most of the infrastructure has big positive impact. So don't worry about waste of money. But the Japan's experience, after we reach certain level of infrastructure investments, then politicians would like to have roads and railways into their own region. I'd like to give one example in case of Japan. There is one island which is called Shikoku, and which were not connected with mainland. So everybody has to use boat to going there and coming back. And there were 3 politicians in this island. And 3 politicians preferred bridge in his own region. And then surprisingly, 3 bridges were constructed between mainland and Shikoku Island. We were not needed those 3 bridges, but those 3 bridges will definitely losing money, and it does not create so much economic activity. So I think it is very important to look at whether the spillover effects will be created or not. And one of the rule of thumb, based on my experience, is whether that will bring population and workers and residents or not. But it is very important to look at your Uzbekistan's case by looking at the past project, how much they have created spillover effects. Then you can tell what kind of conditions which will create much bigger connectivity or much more impact into the region. Those past study will be a very good lesson for you for the future. And that's why I answered to Deputy Dean. And lots of infrastructure had been constructed already in Asia, Central Asia. Then you should look at all those past examples, cases, and then look at success story and failed stories. And that will tell to the answer to you, whether over construction or in needed construction. Yeah, so we need lots of study because there are lots of examples already. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you very much.